Hey guys, it is May 16th, and you guys are watching the Full Court Press podcast. Let's run it. Hey guys, welcome to the Full Court Press podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is, like I said, May 16th. We're your hosts, Doc J and JD, and we want to thank all you guys for stopping by. The channel is continuing to grow. Please have enough time to like and subscribe. Help us continue to bring the best content possible for you guys. As you know, we discuss everything from news all the way down to rumors. But before we start, I really want to kind of talk about the elephant in the room, and in my opinion, that is Ja Morant. So, Ja Morant, it seems like he didn't learn from his first initial flop, where he posted himself on Instagram with a gun in a club, and once again has been caught on Instagram Live by his friend who was recording in the car and flashed the camera over to him, showing that he was just carrying what seemed to be a much bigger gun this time while he was driving. So first and foremost, before we even kind of discuss this, this is not a political thing. I don't think anyone is saying that Ja Morant cannot own firearms. I myself own firearms, and we believe in Second Amendment rights. However, the issue is the glorification of a banger lifestyle that most African Americans, if not all African Americans who live that lifestyle, are always trying to get away from that. Now, I want you guys to take this with a grain of salt. I am a white dude from Utah, but I spent 10 years in the Army. I met a lot of friends, brothers, soldiers who I share camaraderie with, who came from that kind of lifestyle, who had to join the Army to get away from it. I've had them share very intimate details with me about the dangers of living that lifestyle, how scary it was. I had one friend in particular, who will be nameless, who basically told me that he was carrying a pistol from as early as 7th grade so he could feel safe at school. So the reason why this is kind of a trigger point for me is because I know a lot of people try to get away from that banging lifestyle. And that's a lifestyle a Ja doesn't know anything about. Like, let's just be honest about this. Like, he went to a private high school, okay? He has a wonderful family dynamic. His parents are still married. He went to Duke. Like, he does not come from that lifestyle. And to try to glorify a lifestyle of violence and fear is absolutely appalling. And apparently he didn't learn the first time. Not to mention his little interview with Adam Silver is now garbage. And Jalen Rose. Oh, the gun wasn't mine. I went to rehab for 3 days. Yeah, you didn't learn anything, man. You didn't learn anything. Look, you don't know anything about this lifestyle, period. You're a rich kid. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you really care about these young kids and you want to use your platform properly, why don't you do something like start giving back the millions and millions of dollars you have to these communities? Build some food banks, man. Set up nonprofit organizations. Help kids pay for tuition for some of these kids to go to college, for Christ's sake. I'm so appalled at this kind of behavior. And apparently losing $600,000 was just not enough for him. Per Woj, he's most likely going to receive a double-digit lofty suspension, which will make him ineligible for All-NBA. And honestly, he deserves it. What's your take on this, JD? Sorry, I'm heated, man. When I see
it sounds like it.
It just bugs me, man.
Well, obviously, you know, we've seen a little bit of what's going on with Ja, and it seems like he completely was just insincere with his apology, with trying to move on and things like that, with his interviews, you know, with Jalen Rose, which you were talking about. I just, it's sad to see. I think that he's throwing away his career. He seems to be throwing away a lot of his deals. He's a super talent. I mean, I've never seen somebody so athletic as him in the NBA. I think he's
Yeah.
maybe one of the most, if not the most athletic player in the NBA. And it seems like he's, throwing his life away. I do, I feel for him in a way. I think that obviously, flashing the gun and stuff like that. I was able to watch that video. Shows him, briefly flashing the gun, and then his friend tried to pull away. Seems like he's still, a young guy trying to grow up. And I think it's interesting in the sense that it was a big mistake at the start, when he first did that, when he was flashing his gun on Instagram Live, being drunk and stuff like that. You wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt maybe in the beginning, but then stuff starts emerging, that maybe he beat up some 17-year-old after a basketball game, him and his buddy. And then, there's something about the Pacers where his buddy got into it with the Pacers, and then the Pacers bus had some laser beam pointed at it. Allegedly a gun. I know that one of the security officers said for sure it was. And then, there's a lot of controversy going around with stuff like that, with him. But I think, you do it once, you see, it pops up, maybe you're like, okay, well, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Just don't let it happen again. It's, fool me once, shame on me, but fool me twice, shame on you. This is the second time. And
it's fool me
you
once,
really got to think about it,
Fool me twice, shame on me.
Oh, yeah. Wait, what? I said it backwards?
But I know exactly what you're saying. And this is exactly why with this this latest incident, I just don't have any remorse for this guy. Look, if you want to post something on Instagram with guns, maybe post gun safety, post yourself at the range. Don't post yourself in clubs, driving a vehicle, holding a gun that you clearly have no idea how to even operate. Just stop, man. We all know where you came from. We know that you're not a banger, man. Stop trying to pretend to be one. You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing the NBA as a brand, and you're embarrassing your family. Think about how hard his parents worked to get him into that school, to get him to Duke, to support him through his basketball dreams. This kid is playing a sport that most kids will just dream about their entire lives. Kids will dream about being NBA players, but most of them will never actually get there. Ja Morant is there. He's supposed to be the face of the NBA moving forward. He's the next generation. Guys like him, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, these up and comers are supposed to have a positive impact with their brand. And when you have a platform like that, you just can't be acting a fool. Not only are you taking money out of your pocket, you're taking it out of your family's pocket. And I'm just disappointed, man. But I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked.
I want to chime in here. I do have a little bit of remorse for Ja, and I want to see, sense I think there might be a lot to the story. We're just seeing these highlight moments that he's really messing up. I think there's some moments, this is a guy that's coming in. He was a superstar talent. He did grow up wealthy, like you mentioned. He grew up with a great support system.
Yes.
But you see stuff parents,
you got money, you went to a private school, and you went to Duke. Okay, you're not broke. You don't come from Oakland.
But he's not making the money,
Oakland, man.
But Doc, he's not making the money that he was making before. This is his own. He's generating his own wealth. He's becoming extremely famous. He's an absolute celebrity. Everybody is loving him. I think in a way that can weigh a lot on somebody. I don't think we really realize what goes into being the number 1 or number 2 pick overall. Like Zion Williamson, for example. I think he was able to manage it pretty well. Everybody was talking about him in high school. He was an absolute celebrity, even in high school. And you start to see things like with Zion, for instance, he has mentioned that he's constantly on social media, seeing what people are saying about him. There's that whole thing where he didn't come back in the playoffs or to try and make the playoffs this season.
Because he didn't feel like Zion.
He didn't feel like Zion, which is pretty weird considering the fact that he said he was physically healthy, just not really mentally healthy.
Right.
And like, I do think that's kind of foolish. You're making millions, but at the same time, it's like these guys are superstar celebrities. They, are listening to maybe like bad influences. Maybe they have a bad set of influences. I mean, like,
I was about to say, they just need to get different social circles. It's very clear to me that Ja Morant's social circle of friends don't actually care about him. They're weighing him down, and they're just fame whoring off of him, man. Like, that's the truth. Like, Juan Toscano-Anderson, who plays for the Jazz, actually tweeted out, man, Ja Morant's friends are like the police. Why are they always recording? That's a great question. Why are they always recording? Because they're trying to fame whore off of this guy's success. They're riding his coattails. I would tell Ja, he's probably never going to listen to this podcast, but whatever. Look, man, get rid of all those people who are wearing you down. They're not doing you any favors. You need to focus on yourself, your career, and then giving back to those communities that you care about. With that said,
he's got some time to consider too. He's been suspended again. Yeah. Hopefully this time around he can have, his family, some good support system, come and talk with him, and maybe he can get the therapy he actually needs instead of, saying he went to therapy for 10 days and really not having it be a huge impact.
I totally agree. With that said, I'm going to get off my soapbox here. Let's move on. So let's talk a little bit about Philadelphia and the 76ers. Actually, that still makes sense. What I was going to say, though, is Philly and Boston. So Jason Tatum has made Celtics history by scoring 2 50-point games in the postseason. I mean, being able to set history for a team that has 17 banners is insane. He had a 50-point game, I believe, a few years ago, I think in 2021. And then obviously the 51-point game, which is the most in any Game 7 in NBA history. You cannot take anything away from Jason Tatum. You can't take anything away from the Boston Celtics organization. That team is deep, and they came to win, and Philadelphia didn't. Now, with that said, I think one of the only reasons Philly had an actual shot was because of the incredible performance from James Harden in Game 1, where they stole it right out of Boston. He had a 46-point game, which is the most in his career in the postseason. He also had a 42-point game, but they just flamed out. And when you kind of look at them, this is the 10th Game 7 that Doc Rivers has lost. And I love Doc Rivers, but you have a superstar and MVP who can't even make it to his respective conference finals. You have Doc Rivers, who's probably going to get chopped. Let's be honest. It seems like that's the trend right now with a lot of these teams that are flaming out. They're just firing coaches left and right. Monty Williams got fired. Mike Budenholzer got canned. It's only a matter of time before Doc Rivers gets canned as well. So the real question here, JD, that I am proposing is, what is Harden's future like in Philly? Do you think it's over?
I do for sure. I think that Harden, he took a pay cut to stay with the 76ers to try and win, to get that extra depth, but they still can't make it out of the second round. And I do want to pin some blame on him too. I think that, he did have some stellar performances, but I think games 5 through 7, he made something like 2 of 14 from 3. I have his 3-point percentage, only 20% in the final game, 1 for 5. His field goal percentage, 25% Game 6, 27% Game 7. He played terribly. And I know that he's a veteran, but I see this happen a lot with him. I think it happened in Houston when they were going against the Spurs, if I'm not mistaken. They keep botching 3-2 leads, and I think something has to change there. I think they are, I'm going to say that they're going to use Doc Rivers as a scapegoat. And they've been doing that a lot in the NBA recently. A lot of these coaches are really successful, are fired, and maybe they need a change of pace, a different voice in the locker room, but I don't really think so. And I don't think Harden's staying. In fact, this is per Woj. It's not just a rumor or anything. This is Woj, the guy. He says, and I quote, "James Harden's future is very unclear in Philadelphia. Houston is very much in play for him. A lot will depend on if they make a run and win." And this was a couple months ago. And did they make a run and win? They did not. They botched a 3-2 lead. I put some blame on Harden. I put some blame maybe on the team, the coaching, definitely Embiid. I don't think Embiid played at an MVP caliber level at all. In fact, makes me, I think he deserves the MVP, but at the same time, Jokic, he's being stellar in the playoffs. He's absolutely destroying. He had better stats. But anyway, I think that you're blowing a 3-2 lead with a home court advantage. Harden's not going to be happy about that.
No.
The fact that Woj is talking about it, saying that he's going to leave potentially, maybe go to Houston where he feels more comfortable. I know he has family there. I think that's definitely something to look into. I think it's very shaky. I think that Harden's future is essentially over in Philadelphia.
See, I agree, but I don't. I think that if they try to run it back for one more year, he picks up the player option, they can try to retool. And that's going to be a very tall and difficult order. Maybe you do have to let Doc Rivers go and you look to pick up Mike D'Antoni again, or a more offensive-minded coach. Maybe you take a look at Monty Williams or Mike Budenholzer. There's a lot of guys out there that could definitely help, I think, bring a more offensive-minded game to Philadelphia. And that's just kind of how James is. I think a lot of the problem, too, is Joel Embiid had probably one of the biggest statistical drops of any player I've ever seen in the postseason, especially for an MVP. He went from averaging 33 points a game to 23 points a game in the postseason, and that's garbage. Like, you're right. I think he also deserved the MVP for the regular season, but Lord, did he flame out badly. That was like a James Harden flame out too.
This is common from him.
It is. But to go from, he's never gone from 33 to 23. He's never had a 10-point like rollback essentially. So that's something that they really have to look into. I just think that when you have a guy like Tyrese Maxey too, like that kid plays his heart out. If you can find a way to keep Harden, maybe you sit him and Embiid down. You say collectively, we're going to take one more swing at this. What coach do you guys want me to bring in? And let's start retooling the roster to get you guys some actual depth. Because one of the things they really struggled with during the season was when they didn't have the guys out there, they were getting smashed. I'm sorry, like I love Niang as much as the next guy, but he's not your sixth man. They don't have an actual sixth man. You know, they tried to move to Tyrese Maxey, but then there was an open glaring spot for them in the starting lineup. They just have to find better talent. They have to find a way to do it either through trades or whatever. But I think the Philadelphia organization, I think they'll be able to retain Harden for one more year. One more.
I don't necessarily think so. In fact, this is maybe a hot take, but I think Harden is like a huge competitor. I'm sure he wants to win. I'm sure he wants to win it all. You know, that's the reason why he takes a pay cut. But I can guarantee that he's regretting having taken that pay cut. You know, and I think he's probably a little upset. We've seen him do this time and time again on different teams. Mm-hmm. He'll, he's in Houston. I think he got the Houston coach fired. Goes to Brooklyn. You know, they're not super successful. Steve Nash got fired, and now we're in Philly, and Doc Rivers is most likely getting fired. I just don't think the guy has that competitive nature in him. Mm-hmm. I think that he's going to want that more leisure, enjoyable life, you know, maybe finishing up his career. I still think, you know, he can win. He's a good player. He's obviously a great talent, but I don't think that he's going to want to stay in Philadelphia.
I think that if he goes back to Houston, it would blow my mind because of the way he left there to begin with. Like he put Houston through and like this is what a lot of people forget, but I'll never forget this. He put them through so much drama. They tried Dwight Howard. It didn't work. Then they went with Chris Paul. It didn't work. Then they went with Russell Westbrook, and it didn't work. And James said, trade all of them. I don't want anything to do with any of these guys. If he thinks he can go back there and have that same kind of like diva attitude, there is no way, if I own the Rockets, seeing the history that he had in Houston, there's no way I'd take him back. With that said, I know that Houston does want to make some big swings, especially with what their GM kind of said during their exit interview. So, JD, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, we have heard some reports, and if you want to look up exactly where we found it, Houston, the Rockets are trying to make a push to be relevant. And, the reports are saying that they are willing to trade, Jalen Green. They're willing to trade their lottery pick for some veterans. And not only that, they hired Ime Udoka, who was a great coach, with the Celtics. He had that, that huge blow up where he was taken out of there. But I still think he's a good coach. They're picking him up. I think that their future could be looking bright. In fact, I think that it's very likely, just like I was mentioning with James Harden, per Woj, that he's feeling a little shaky about being in Philadelphia, that he might in fact want to go to Houston. I think that if he goes to Houston, in fact, I actually think that is the plan, and Houston's preparing for this. Because if they get James Harden, he's still in his early 30s. He's still got some, potential to really make a run.
He does.
And
guys, if you're wondering too, don't mean to cut you off, JD. That article was found on Sports Illustrated. I just typed in our Houston Rockets GM, Raphael Stone, and the article popped up. So if you guys want to go check that out, you absolutely can. JD, please continue.
Yeah, I still think that Harden has a lot left in the tank. He's still got a lot of potential to be good. And I think that Houston could be, a potential next really good team, maybe even a super team. And here's why I think this, Doc. I think that if they're willing to trade Jalen Green, who I think was like their number one option, as well as their lottery pick, which I think they might end up trading, we're going to find out tonight where that is going to lie, whether it's, 1, 2, 3, 4, a little later. But, if they get somebody, they're projected to get the number 2 pick in Scoot Henderson. I think that guy's going to be a generational. If they're willing to give him, I think they could get some good pieces. And I know a couple teams that might be willing to do it. One of which, I see in Portland. So the Trailblazers. And I know that this is some speculation, but we've also heard Damian Lillard say he doesn't want to be on a rebuilding team. Now, I could very much see the Rockets wanting to trade that pick, and Portland, who's on a rebuild, they got Shaedon Sharpe, who was a really young guy, but he's showing a lot of talent. They've got Anthony Simons. They're trying to do a rebuild.
Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic.
Jeremy Grant too. But, I see Portland as a team that's on the rebuild. And so Damian Lillard being traded and then getting a generational talent, maybe like Scoot Henderson or maybe one of the other, third or fourth pick, that's going to set up Portland's future, to be a really good team in the next maybe 3 to 5 years. And Damian Lillard, he doesn't want to be on a rebuilding team. You throw him in Houston. Maybe you have Houston trade Jalen Green, that lottery pick for Damian Lillard. Then you pair up Damian Lillard with someone like James Harden. You got a couple young guys that are pretty good. You have a ton of cap space if you want to get into that as well. I know Houston has a lot of cap space.
Yes,
you get some more depth. What do you think about that, Doc?
I think that I agree with you absolutely. I think Houston is, with the hiring of Ime Udoka, who, regardless, like just what you said, love him or hate him for his actions off of the basketball court, he's a hell of a coach. He got the Celtics to the finals last year. I think he's a brilliant tactician. I think he knows how to make really good adjustments. Hiring a winning coach like that is going to change the culture of your franchise. Steven Silas just never had a chance. We just have to admit that. And then with Raphael Stone coming out and saying that they're very happy with the young talent they already have, unless they get the number 1 pick, which they would be a fool to trade. I think that everything else is on the table.
And Doc, can I mention something real fast?
Yeah.
Something else to really consider too is Ime Udoka, if I'm not mistaken, was an assistant coach with Brooklyn. And so he was working with James Harden as well.
There you go. I like you said as well, they have more cap space than I think any other team going into the off season. So if you could sign Harden and try to make a pass for, hell, even Jeremy Grant would probably be a really good fit next to James Harden. Under Ime Udoka, all of a sudden you're a much more relevant team. And I can see that team, depending on what other pieces you get and put around, the superstar you're trying to acquire, they absolutely could make a push for the playoffs, and that would be really exciting for them. I know that the fans in Houston are antsy. They're sick of being irrelevant. I don't blame them. They've sucked since Harden left, which would shock me if they allowed him to come back. Oh, man, it's like dating your ex-girlfriend. Like, you broke up for a reason, right? You don't move back, man. But
forgive and forget.
They're going to figure something out. And I think that they're making all the right moves to do that. I think hiring a coach of Ime's caliber was a very smart move. Great first move. And then saying you're open to trade your lottery pick. Let's say they do get the second pick. Even the 4th pick. There are going to be a lot of teams clamoring to try to get that pick if you're open to trading it.
And Doc, I think another potential area or potential trade suitor could be the Phoenix Suns. I know that the Phoenix Suns have kind of been in a bit of a wreck since after they lost to the Nuggets in quite the fashion that they did. And they might be wanting to switch things up. You could maybe reunite Chris Paul with James Harden, maybe go after Deontay Ayton? But overall, I think the Suns is somebody or a team that we should be talking about.
Yeah, my heart really goes out for these guys, especially as a Jazz fan, because it wasn't too long ago that we were the best team in the NBA, and we just got rolled over by the Celtics, or not the Celtics, by the Clippers, without Kawhi Leonard. For them to get smashed in Game 7 by the Mavericks and then just get suffocated by Denver this year, there's a lot of turmoil there. Per Tim McMahon, who works for ESPN, he actually came out and stated that he heard from one of their insiders from their front office that they are going to be shopping Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton. And honestly, I don't blame them. I think that what they proved to me, at least in this postseason, was they don't actually need Chris Paul anymore. Chris Paul has been a more developmental piece for them. He made them relevant when they were, entering a very nasty playoff drought. Devin Booker was drafted in 2014. He didn't make the playoffs for the first 5 years of his career. It wasn't until they got Chris Paul that they went from not making the playoffs to being in the finals in the NBA, and then having the best record in the NBA. So, and I think all of that was a direct contribution from Chris Paul and his leadership and his mentorship. However, the saying, water is wet, and Chris Paul will be hurt in the postseason. That's just kind of how it always is. This year was no different. I don't know what they're going to get back for Chris Paul, especially because his contract is hefty. I think you'd have to unload him somewhere else. But I do think that you take, if you're Houston, you take an absolute look at Ayton, because Ayton brings you a guy who can get you rebounds. And my favorite thing about him is the fact that you don't have to run plays for this guy, and he's still going to get you 17 and 10 a night. When you have ball dominant guys like Devin Booker and Kevin Durant kind of playing back and forth the way they did, it was really a two-man game. Ayton was still putting up numbers. I wish we could have said that about Rudy Gobert when he was here in Utah. But Ayton is always going to get his numbers. He cleans up the glass really well. He could be a little tougher on defense. I think he'd fit well in Houston. I think he does need to change of pace, though, for sure.
Well, now hold on here, Doc. First off, with Chris Paul, I definitely think that Chris Paul would have made a difference. And I mean, that I know that's not what you're saying, but you're saying that maybe they weren't there. It shows that they don't really need him anymore because he's been injured. Well, they lost, I thought, in a terrible fashion. They were down 30 points at the half in their final game. How do you lose by that much with having Devin Booker, who's like one of the most efficient, if not the most efficient guy in the playoffs, who was leading in points per game, as well as having a guy named Kevin Durant? And with Deontay Ayton, is it Deontay?
It's Deontay.
Deontay Ayton.
I think you're thinking of DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah. Well, I know Deontay Ayton. But the thing is with Ayton, it's like a terrible performance. In fact, like I saw in one of the games that Ayton was like in a huddle with Booker. You know, Booker's kind of getting into it, trying to talk to everybody, especially Ayton. And then Ayton just walks out. He just doesn't care. I heard he got into it with Monty Williams. Monty Williams is a player's coach, a guy that, you know, basically everybody loves. He seems to be kind of a toxic guy. And I know that the Suns were trying to trade Ayton, but they ended up, you know, they got him, they kept him with that huge contract of his. I think it's going to be tough for somebody to really want to keep a max contract guy who, you know, he can put up 17 and 10. I know he did that overall, you know, in the season. It's pretty good. I just don't think he's a max contract caliber player. And I think maybe teams will notice that. But, you know, I want to put some of the blame on Ayton. I want to put some of the blame, you know, on the team, on the coaching, you know, the owner as well for the lack of depth of the team. But I want to say I want to put a lot of the blame on Kevin Durant.
Ooh.
Now, KD, I think KD is a special player. In fact, if you clock back a few years ago, he's probably the best player in the NBA. Yeah. Is he that right now? I don't know. I think that he still puts up really great numbers. He's very, very efficient. But what I saw from him in the playoffs and what I see from him consistently in the playoffs is that he gets knocked out, you know, in the first or second round. And, you know, he did have some decent numbers against the Nuggets. But I just want to point out that he was only shooting in those final games 40%. He only took, he didn't have a 3-point make in the final 2 games. It's like, here's the thing. You cannot beat Father Time, and Kevin Durant is getting older. For the Suns to have made such a robust trade, you know, to acquire Kevin Durant, I think that in hindsight, it looks good because he's such a great player, but I think overall it was not a good trade. And I think that, you know, they're missing such a huge piece of depth to their team. You know, Mikal Bridges, who is, you know, averaging something like 26, 27 since being traded. You got Cam Thomas, who is averaging 18 in the playoffs. Those are great guys. You give up all of your draft picks to get this guy. And he's old. You know, he's getting older. And he's been injury prone. I do still think the guy's incredible. I think he's going to put up good numbers next year. But at the same time, I think he's going to be injured. And I think the Suns are going to be dropped out in the first or second round.
This is where I'm going to disagree with you because I hear what you're saying. And it's very well put together. But Kevin Durant isn't to blame here. Did Kevin Durant ask to be traded? Yeah, he did, right? And he asked to go to Phoenix too. But Kevin Durant still, even though his efficiency dipped a little bit, he was averaging 29 points per game through the postseason. The guy who wasn't there when they needed him was Chris Paul. And Monty Williams, as much as I love Monty, he didn't really make any adjustments that they needed to make. Also, the front office, in terms of the max contract for DeAndre, now I'm doing it, for Ayton, DA, the Pacers offered him that contract because they saw some value in him. They wanted him. The Suns could have let him walk. They absolutely could have let him walk, but they signed him to that. So I think it's more of a front office issue personally. And I would just start cleaning house if I was the owner. But I would also absolutely shop around Chris Paul. I would shop around Ayton to see what you can get. Maybe you can swap Ayton with Turner. Miles Turner is not very happy in Indiana. He went on a podcast like halfway through the season and was trying to lobby to get the Lakers to trade for him. I don't know how you don't get in trouble for something like that, but hey, it is what it is. But maybe both of those teams can come to some sort of agreement and just swap one for one. I think Turner's a better defender, and I think that he can spread the floor way better than Ayton can. But I think, and in terms of trying to shop Chris Paul, you're not going to get nearly, the haul like that you would be hoping for. But let's say you take a couple of non-favorable contracts for some guys who are pretty decent role players. Maybe you can get your hands on Duncan Robinson, okay, with the Heat.
He's expensive. He
is. But at this point in his career, he's the spot-up shooter and can provide the depth that they're kind of looking for, Davis Bertans is another spot-up shooter. They just need some guys who are going to help them defend, who are going to shoot the ball and give them production outside of Booker and Kevin Durant. It can't be 2 versus 5 out there.
Yeah. Well, I think, what I'm trying to say here is I know that KD is still incredible. He's a great talent, but I just do not think he's the player that he was. I don't think that he is a top 5 player anymore in the NBA. And I got to be honest, I think that's okay, we've got Embiid, we've got Giannis, Jokic, maybe Steph and Luka right there. Maybe he's not even a top player. Like Butler, Tatum. He's got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's an up-and-coming incredible player.
Yeah,
Donovan Mitchell. First team. Maybe Donovan, although I'd probably take KD. I don't know. But, he's up there. I would probably take Booker over him too. LeBron.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
So, KD, he's still an incredible talent, but I think you're going to need much more depth, in order to pull this off than maybe you would have initially thought. He's not 30 anymore. He's not 28. He's 35. He's probably going to be injured. And he's still great, but I think Booker's the number 1 guy.
Oh, I don't think there's any debate that Booker's the number 1 guy. And I think KD likes playing alongside someone who can say hi.
I sort of saw the bug in that room.
Okay, I'll come check in a second. Hold on, I'm almost done. And I think KD is at a place where he doesn't mind passing off a lot of the load to a younger, efficient superstar like Booker. But I think he got him for 4 years. I don't think he is the same player. I agree. But I think he's good enough to where if you retool this team and you get some sort of value for Chris Paul and you maybe swap Ayton for Turner, I really think Miles Turner would help anchor their defense. I mean, he's been multiple perennial DPOY candidates over his career. Like, he's a guy who can anchor your defense. That's what Devin Booker and Kevin Durant need so they offensively can create the production that they do, So if you can find a couple guys, and make the salaries work for Chris Paul, I think they have a shot.
Well, I think we can agree on that. I probably need to try and shop CP3 as well as Ayton.
Yeah, they're going to have to. Guys, tonight is going to be the draft. We're so excited. JD, do you have any predictions? I know it's the lottery, so it's impossible to predict, but what do you think is going to happen here?
From what I understand, the team with the worst record in the NBA has never gotten the first pick. So does that mean that the Detroit Pistons might not get the number 1 pick? Were they the worst? They were the worst, right?
I believe so.
I might have to double check that one.
In the Spurs and Charlotte were all absolutely terrible. So
I can see that maybe one of the teams outside the top 5 might sneak into the top 4. That could be Washington, that could be Utah, it could be the Dallas Mavericks. We'll just have to see.
I absolutely am going on a limb here, and I don't mind. That's the whole purpose of these podcasts. I think the Utah Jazz are going to top 4 pick. I would lock that down. I absolutely believe, and I don't know why I don't have any proof. There's no way you can have proof or evidence for that anyways. But
if you're wrong about this, it's going to be funny to look back at.
And I might be. But I have this sneaky suspicion that Utah is going to find a way to crack the top 4. I think the ping pong balls are going to fly and give us some luck here. I think Utah is going to walk away with like the 4th pick, maybe even the 2nd, which is crazy and bonkers to think about. Mm-hmm. But, it's happened before. Look at Chicago in 2008 with Derrick Rose. They had a 1% chance of getting the number 1 pick. They got Derrick Rose. So hopefully the Utah Jazz, I'm crossing my fingers here, come through and get something amazing.
For sure. Well, Doc, is there anything more you want to talk about?
I think we're good here to wrap it up. But guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Thanks so much for listening. And down in the comments, let us know what you guys think is going to happen. Let us know about the predictions we made, some of the speculation, the rumors we addressed. Let us know how you feel about Ja Morant. Let us know how you feel about Houston's plans to try to make it big. Let us know if you think Harden's even staying in Philly. But we love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Thank you for the comments, good or bad. We know that you're commenting because you guys love basketball, just like we do. So take care, guys. We'll see you soon.